Thank you very much. Hopefully within the discussion we'll hear a little bit more also about how you work with smallholder farmers and how you work with the UN, because I think that that's a very interesting aspect of what it is that you do. For anyone who's been keeping track, we've gone from an international organization to a private company, and now we're going to a government of a developing country, and specifically Dawit Mulugeta from Ethiopia, from the Agricultural Transformation Agency. The Agricultural Transformation Agency is this extremely interesting unit. It's in the Prime Minister's office of the government of Ethiopia, and its whole purpose was to try to jumpstart the agricultural export industry. I hope I'm getting this right. If I'm not, then you're going to correct me afterwards, right? I learned this from the Chief of Staff is a mutual friend of ours, and so I learned it from him, and so you'll be able to report back to him if he's taught me well or not. They wanted to help jumpstart Ethiopia's agricultural export industry, and they've had this enormous success with bringing companies from all around the world to work in Ethiopia and to work with smallholder farmers in a way that enables them to produce for export. Now, Dawit is a program analyst in the office of the CEO at the ATA in Ethiopia, and he manages at the moment a $500 million farmer cooperative storage project nationwide. And so we're very, very happy to have you, and please.
Hello. Hi. So my name is Dawit. I am a program analyst, as Aliza just introduced me. And I'm here basically to talk about the ATA, what we do, and specifically the PPP program. I mean, the ATA is a big organization. We have about 20 program teams. So PPP is one of them, but since this panel is focused on PPP, I try to focus my talk on what we do in the PPP. Aliza, can you? All right. Oh, cool. Okay. No, I can drive it from. So basically, there are three things I want to talk about: who we are as an organization, what we do in the PPP program, and then some examples of what we do in that specific program. So a little bit of history about the ATA. The ATA was started basically when our late Prime Minister Zenawi met Melinda Gates at a summit, and he had a specific request for her, which is Ethiopia at present, even then, had the largest number of development agents per capita after China in the world. But if you look at the maybe India and China, but if you look at our agricultural growth in the past 20, 30 years, there hasn't been any change. So he wanted to know, he wanted Melinda Gates to help him with a study to diagnose the problem and then recommend some solutions. So based on that conversation, there was a study that was done, and this diagnostic was submitted to him, but part of the diagnostic also identified is that there's other problems in the value chain, including soils, seeds, irrigation, agriculture finance. So he realized that there is a bigger study that needs to be done. So the next phase was to have more study to understand the agricultural sector. So that's when the 7 diagnostic reports came sometime in August. So later on, this recommendation was presented to Parliament, and basically there was the need to set up an agency to implement the recommendations. And this agency was modeled after countries, especially Taiwan, and Korea and Mexico, that had similar accelerating units or transformation agencies that were very catalytic in terms of transforming the agricultural sector. So lessons were gathered, and so the Agricultural Transformation Agency came to be. And sometime in August 2011, it was officially launched. But it was really modeled after the agencies in Taiwan, Korea, and Mexico that were very instrumental in transforming the agricultural sector, also the economy, and then eventually phasing out. Like somebody mentioned, I think Deborah, it was you mentioned CIMIT. CIMIT actually used to be the Mexican Transformation Agency, which then later became into a bigger international research institution. So what's ATA's mandate? So basically we have 2 big mandates. One is we are a time-bound organization, so we will phase out at some point. So hopefully within the next 10 to 15 years, we'll phase out. But the idea first is to, one, work across long-term systemic bottlenecks in the agricultural sector, identify that, and then propose solutions, and then also supporting their implementation. The other part is short-term opportunities that we can take advantage of working with our partners to really, they could be initiatives across value chains that we do that will have immediate impact. But all this is not done just by the ATA. We will have partners that we coordinate. It's in the government, Ministry of Agriculture, there's in the NGO sector, in the multilateral organizations. We even work with the USAID AGP Armed Project. And so a number of organizations get involved in the project. So basically, ATA has a setup of three main pillars that we work across in, which is, one is what we call the systems pillar. The other is the value chain pillar. The third is the initiative or the cross-cutting pillar. So within the systems, we have different teams beginning from the one end of the value chain going all the way to the other end, which is really between research and markets. So if you look at all those, the one on the green, on the left corner, which is the green section, we have teams that are specifically working across systemic issues in the value chain. So we have research, extension, markets, seeds, even cooperatives. And at the same time, we also have value chains that are very crop-specific value chains. So their entry point is crop-specific. So we identify crops that are strategic to the country from a point of view of food security, and some crops that are strategic from the point of view of exports. Aliza was mostly talking about the export crops, but we actually work across different crops. And then the initiatives, the cross-cutting initiatives, are also a very integral part of what we do. And this is where our PPP team comes into the picture. So we have the technology and access adoption team, we have a climate, even a gender, and then MLE teams. These are cross-cutting teams that actually support all what the system and value chain teams do. And the systems teams actually identify cross-cutting bottlenecks, systemic bottlenecks. So it could be policy, it could be problems in terms of coordinating different units within the government, and they propose solutions. So we write strategies. And the value chains actually work. They are very close to the ground. They are very they are very crop focused, and they work mostly on identifying bottlenecks and in proposing solutions. But when we do all this, we have a very unique model. So our leadership is mostly from the Ethiopian diaspora. Our CEO comes from JP Morgan, actually. But he was the director for the BMJ Foundation in Africa. And then we have our chief of staff, Naraf, who actually worked with Aliza in the World Bank. But we also have staff who went abroad. I studied abroad. We have local staff, technical experts. We also have international consultants coming from consulting companies like Bain and McKinsey who work with us. So we have a very unique model in terms of our staffing. So everybody is organized with any of these programs, and then we drive specific initiatives. So how do we do what we do? Basically, we have 4 different tools that we use to solve some of the problems in the agricultural sector. Obviously, of course, the focus is always the smallholder farmer. First is problem solving. So, like I said, I come from a very strong analytical background. So there's analytical staff that work on actually identifying issues, providing very granular, factual analysis to some of the issues in the agricultural sector, also propose best practices from elsewhere. Another component is using that analysis, bringing that to the government agencies, because we are not an implementing agency. The ministries are the implementing agency, so we have to provide implementation support when it doesn't exist. At the same time, to do that, we have to also build a capacity, because there's a lack of capacity in terms of not just designing some of these programs, but also implementing. So we provide some capacity building, could be in trainings, workshops, short-term educational programs, things like that, to make sure that our partners have the capacity to execute on some of the programs we have. And then, of course, the last component is the stakeholder coordination, making sure that we coordinate among stakeholders, including some of the NGOs, the government agencies, and some of the donor community in Ethiopia and Africa. So the PPP program. So the PPP is actually one of the newer programs we have at the ATA. So we're having, I think it's been about 1.5 or 2 years since they've been set up. But one of the things they do is create market linkages. So link the smallholder farmer with, the private sector. It could be international businesses or local businesses. But one of the things they are expected to do is help the smallholder farmer connect with these buyers. And then information collation and data provision. So basically, as I mentioned, ATA, one of the things ATA does is providing this problem solving. So we help them problem solve and sometimes provide business plans and generally provide it will be the first stop if an investor comes to Ethiopia in terms of finding information, relevant analysis and business plans in terms of getting information. And then obviously the PPP also serves as a point of contact for a lot of businesses. So they come to Ethiopia. Sometimes we even go all the way out to picking them up from the airport and making sure that they are connected with the right governmental institutions and they are well taken care of. And then obviously we also facilitate market linkages with partners. It could be UNDP or any other development agency that would like to work with these companies. Last thing we do is also support agroprocessing. So this is also one of the things the PPP team does. So we have, I think, specifically on barley malt processing, sesame hulling, chickpea. I think there's more business plans that we've developed. It's in public domain now. But we make sure that some strategic agro-processing areas are in the forefront, and we make sure that we attract the right kind of businesses to work across these sectors. Just an example of some of the things we're doing across crops and across the value chain. So basically, we have strategic crops like maize, teff, which is very specific to Ethiopia, wheat, sesame, chickpea, and barley. And across these crops, we've identified some partners that we can work with. So as you can see, there's a wide range of companies. Some are local, some are very big international companies. You can see Alana Potash, you can see DuPont. There's big companies like Cargill and Diageo and Heineken even involved. So we work across a different range of companies in terms of making sure that they have enough information on the ground and connect with the smallholder farmers, also facilitate linkages with government agencies. Some examples of what they do. So as I said, one of the things they do is this information collation and sharing of business cases. So this is actually a snapshot of a presentation that was presented by our PPP team at the Grow Africa Summit. So for instance, on agroprocessing, they provide data on the actual potential for Africa, on the potential for growth, in terms of what Ethiopia can offer for investors. So there's an example of accessibility to agricultural output, abundance of water in terms of distribution channels, and of course, what kind of support they can get from donor and government agencies. And obviously, they also highlight some of the advantages Ethiopia has in terms of some of the crops. So you can see in sesame seed production, it's Ethiopia's first in Africa, and I know we have a lot of Israeli investors even working in Ethiopia, and I've worked in the export market, Aliza was talking about. So I know very well some Israeli investors who've actually invested in Ethiopia, also some that we do supply to here in Israel. So we have a clear comparative advantage in sesame, maize production clearly, and livestock. So there's many, but this is just a snapshot of what kind of analysis we do and how we work with our investors to provide them with the right kind of opportunities. And then obviously, there's also more about our water potential and kind of, that's very interesting on the right, because you can tell that although we are an agricultural powerhouse in Africa, still using the basic technology you can find, there is still so much that can be done in terms of agriculture in Ethiopia. So there's only 21% of Ethiopia's arable land that has been cultivated. Obviously, this is because most of our agriculture is rain-fed, and to do irrigation, even the type that was mentioned earlier, it requires some capital, some know-how. So we haven't capitalized on that. There is still an opportunity for us for investors to come in and work in Ethiopia. So I'll just skip over this. I think maybe in the course of the discussion there might be some questions I'll answer, but basically this is what the ATA looks like and what we do in the PPP program.